Today, we are jumping into one of the most powerful, foundational, and, let's be honest, kind of weird stories in the entire book of Genesis. It's a story all about promises, fear, faith, and what happens when words just aren't enough.
And it really all boils down to this one question. What does it take for you to truly believe a promise? I mean, if someone promised you something that sounded almost impossible, would you just take their word for it? Or would you need something more? Keep that in the back of your mind, because it's at the heart of Abram's story.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our guy, Abram, has just won this massive military victory. You'd think he'd be on top of the world, right? But instead, we find him totally gripped by fear. And not just one fear, but two very different kinds of fear.
Okay, so the first fear is pretty straightforward. It's practical. He just took down a bunch of powerful kings, and it makes perfect sense that he's worried they or their allies might come looking for payback. And God's response is immediate. Fear not, Abram. I am thy shield. Basically, don't worry, I've got your back. A promise of physical protection.
So you can really break down his worries into two camps. On one side, you've got this external threat, the fear of retaliation. But then there's this much deeper, much more personal fear, the internal one, the fear of having no child, no legacy. One is about surviving tomorrow. The other is about whether his whole life has any meaning at all.
And Abram just lays it all out there. You can hear the pain in his voice. He basically says to God, look, what good are all these victories and all this wealth you're promising me if I have no one to leave it to? If everything I own is just going to go to my servant Eliezer? This is a cry from the heart.
So how does God respond to this deep existential cry? Well, he doesn't just pat him on the back and say, it'll be okay. Instead, he makes a promise that is, quite literally, cosmic. First, God gets really specific and clears things up. He says, nope, your servant is not going to be your heir, and heir will come from your own body. This hits Abram's anxiety right where it lives. The promise is intensely personal. And then you get this incredible, almost cinematic moment. God tells Abram, go outside. Stop looking at the inside of your tent and your problems and look up. It's a total shift in perspective, from the small and personal to the vast and infinite. And that's the knockout punch. See all those stars? Try to count them. You can't. That's how many descendants you're going to have. Think about that. This isn't just a promise of one son anymore. It's a promise of a legacy as huge and uncountable as the stars in the sky. Absolutely breathtaking.
And right there, based on nothing more than that verbal promise, the text says, Abram believed. He trusted. And that act of faith, of just taking God at his word against all odds, is counted to him as righteousness. This is a massive moment in the story.
But wait, the story's not over. Because even though Abram believed the promise about a son, there was another promise on the table, the promise of inheriting the land. And for that one, his very human need for some concrete proof bubbles back up to the surface. This is such a critical question. After God brings up the land again, Abram asks, how can I know? See the shift? He's gone from simple belief to needing a sign, needing some kind of tangible proof that he can hold on to. He wants certainty. God's answer to this need for proof isn't another grand speech, oh no. It's a list of instructions for a very strange, very ancient, and very bloody ritual. This is where things take a turn for the intense and visceral.
And the instructions are so specific. A 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. This isn't just a random shopping list. This is the prescribed setup for a very serious, very formal ancient ceremony.
So Abram gets to work. He does exactly what he's told. He cuts the big animals clean in half and arranges the pieces to form a sort of walkway. He leaves the birds whole, and then he spends the day standing guard, driving away birds of prey. You can just feel the gravity and the tension building as he prepares this solemn sacrifice.
As the day ends and the sun starts to go down, this physical ritual transforms into a full-blown supernatural experience. This is the absolute climax of the story, where the promise gets sealed in a way Abram could never possibly forget. The whole mood shifts. A deep sleep falls over Abram, but this is more like a trance. And what he sees is described as terrifying. So this isn't some peaceful, reassuring dream. It's a heavy, frightening encounter with what's to come.
And inside this vision, God lays out the future, warts and all. It's a pretty stark prophecy. He's told his descendants will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years in a land that isn't theirs. But, and this is a huge but, they will eventually be freed, that nation will be judged, and they will come back to this very land. And as for Abram himself, he'll live a long, full life and die in peace. It's a roadmap of suffering, but also of ultimate redemption.
And then finally comes the sign, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch. These powerful symbols of God's presence move right down the path that Abram made between the animal halves. Now back then, when two parties made a treaty like this, they would both walk that path. It was like saying, if I break this promise, may what happened to these animals happen to me. But here's the amazing part. Only God walks the path. He takes the entire oath, the entire risk on himself.
And that right there is what we call a covenant. It's not just a promise anymore. It's a solemn, binding agreement. It's a contract sealed in blood and fire. That ritual gave God's promise a weight and a certainty that words alone never could.
So, once the ceremony is complete, the vow is made again, but this time it's official, it's final, and the terms are laid out with these huge epic borders, from the river of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates. Abram asked, "How will I know?" Well, now he knows. He has his proof.
Which brings us right back to where we started. For Abram, a truly binding promise looked like this bizarre, bloody, supernatural ceremony. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world today, a world that is just flooded with words where promises can feel so cheap, what does it take for us to really, truly know that a promise is real and that it will be kept?